I'm here with John Mayer of the Victorium Group, and John runs a performance marketing agency called the Victorium Group. And John, you're based out of where?
Pittsburgh area. So my business partner's in Tampa. I split time between the two, but headquartered in Pittsburgh.
Okay, awesome. Well, so Steelers fan at heart then?
We cannot let the Browns beat us twice in a row, so this Sunday is a very big day.
Okay. Yeah, you guys do have a big game coming up. Well, I appreciate you making some time to hop on and talk with me today. I wanted to invite you on to do this because, you and I have had some prior conversations. And as a result of those conversations, we, Cordis, have actually engaged your company, the Victorium Group, to help us with performance marketing for Cordis. We're trying to grow and scale our company. And as a fractional CFO, I'm always talking to my clients about growing and scaling their companies. And I'm always trying to say, hey, we really need to be objective about this and use data and make data driven decisions as we do this. And so many of the owners really, they want to fly by night and just go with their gut instinct. And I've seen so many clients just struggle with their marketing and just spend a ton of money and not get great results. And so in an effort to show like what right looks like here. I talked to quite a few different people about marketing in the financial services industry. In Victorium came up again and again. And so, first of all, kudos to you for having a fantastic reputation. The series that I'd like to launch with you, and that you've so graciously agreed to, is really just to be a case study, and to be an open book and show this is what it's like, be totally transparent. This is what the process looks like. This is how you do it and do it well, and show that this can work and that you can get a good return on your investment if you have the right strategy, you measure things, you set the right benchmarks, etc. So today I really just wanted to throw it out there about what does it look like to do performance marketing at a high level, and what's the importance of that. And so I'll turn it over to you just to talk a little bit about performance marketing, Victorium, like your niche, what specifically you guys do.
Absolutely. So huge pleasure. So grateful to do this. So grateful to be working with you. And, through this series, I really want to give, well, there's a few things to tackle here, but context to what this looks like. I think there's a misconception now in the marketplace where, marketing is 100, it's hyperscale all the time, and that's possible, certainly. But I really want to showcase the thought that goes behind it. And it's not so much hitting the home run at the first at bat, but with your data driven approach, and something we talk about a lot is how can you place a big directional bet, but take lower risk shots and iterate until you can scale up. And so, this is true of all businesses, especially in a field like accounting, where there's not, opposed to say hardware, there's not a very clear competitive advantage. If I listed off 10 accounting firms, the average small business owner, they might say, I think my cousin works with one of them. But if I said, all right, give me a list of 5 reasons why XYZ is better than ABC, they're not going to have that. And so what we really look to do is finding and creating the winning edge on services that have the risk of commoditization, or there's ambiguity behind what makes one accounting firm or fractional CFO firm better than another. And so a lot of what we're doing is developing strategy around that. And then, as we're going to get into later in the series, is actionable steps to profitably put that information out into the marketplace and scale up on it. And what I really hope to do here is a few things. And firstly is show SMB owners how we go about thinking through these problems. I think that will be interesting. We are very, as you know, very exhaustive in our discovery process. I always say to our team, we want to do discovery like we're going to buy our clients. We want to be that in depth on their sales and marketing process. Everything from each service line, what's your contribution margin, revenue per customer, what's your current capacity? What's your added overhead going to look like if you have to make more hires? If you go from 10 new clients a month to 35 new clients a month, these are things that we want to get down. We go deep on channel analyzation and understanding, okay, do we want to go Meta or LinkedIn or Google? even areas that we're not working in, for example, SEO, we want to understand your SEO strategy and your organic content, something else we don't really do, but we want to get a feel for it and have congruency between our paid media efforts and your organic content, your website content. Well, that's organic as well, but website content. And so, you know, I think we're never going to run out of content in this series. There's a lot to talk about, but just a little bit of background on myself. Always been a marketing guy. I founded my first marketing agency when I was 16 years old, but I always had an interest in finance. I was a terrible student. I was never going to be the UPenn MBA that goes on to work at Goldman Sachs. And so what I found was I knew a little bit about finance for a finance guy, but a lot about finance for a marketing guy. Now, direct to consumer e-commerce is the frontier in my mind of digital marketing. They're the biggest spenders, the day in and day out of their paid media. Basically, are the typically one of the singular growth pillars of their business. And because of that, they have the most data, that they have the most contemporary tactics. And so what I looked to do when I founded this business about 3.5, 4 years ago was, can we translate the contemporary tactics and insights from data from D2C e-commerce and bring it over into more traditional businesses like accounting, fractional CFOs, private wealth, commercial lending, which we do a lot of work in, and can we bridge that gap? And so that's really been our focus for the past, approaching 48 months, and it's been going well. And so, with the series, I hope to give some insights that not only are actionable to financial service owners like yourself, but anyone in the business space. I think we may discuss some things that are esoteric or specific to fin services. However, a lot of the concepts that we go over and that we utilize do have broad applications outside of that.
Yeah. Do you feel like there's friction though in that process? Because like when I hear you say like, yeah, we want to steal from e-commerce and these guys that like their entire business revolves around how well they advertise and can get their product in front of customers. And and most of the time that's usually like a one-time buy, and it can be an impulse buy. And then you have something like accounting where that's a very sticky, high friction. There has to be a huge amount of trust that's built cross that chasm from like I'm buying a $30 product and I'm advertising for something like that in e-commerce to I'm getting somebody to come over and bring trust all their financials and their innermost secrets on how they spend and how their business operates and do this with a company where potentially the ticket values for if the company is big enough and the accounting could be 60, 70, $80,000 a year. To me, that seems like a huge gap between those. So how do you see that those best practices and those things from the e-commerce world actually like translating over? Do you really think it's that transferable?
So that's a really interesting question and a great question. What I would say is, especially with Facebook rising CPMs over the last few years, incumbents being threatened by more and more companies entering the market, lower barrier to entry for D2C e-commerce, they need brand loyalty. They will die without average order values being over $100, without recurring customers. What I find is, because there is such a stickiness to things like accounting, many accounting firms probably underinvest time and resources into retention, into client communications. It's the desperation of the D2C e-commerce people that they have to push the envelope in ways that isn't really done much in accounting, or your mom and pop shop in your town, their accounting office, they've never had a need for it. And so I would say you're right that there is a big gap there. And because of that gap, it's actually the DTC ecom side that fights even harder, because they have somewhat of an impossible task. If you sell some hemp bracelet or, some new pillow or comfy socks, that's not a very sticky customer base. And so they're the ones spending 6 figures, 7 figures a year on their retention programs, on their customer satisfaction programs. And so there are a lot of learnings. Now, of course, there are some things that just don't translate. You're probably not going to run, Black Friday texting SMS campaign 50% off accounting service discounts. Those things, but there are learnings there. They are the first to try new things because it is so hyper competitive. They have no other option. And I have found that's where you can glean insight where there isn't necessarily that sense of urgency and desperation in things like financial advisories and accounting and bookkeeping.
Yeah. It's interesting that you mentioned financial advisory. One of the services that we offer at Cordis is fractional CFO advisory services. We also have M&A, both buy and sell side transaction advisory. And every single person that I've talked to in this industry that's been around for, let's say, 18 months or longer has said advertising does not work specifically for the client advisory services side of things. What would you say to that?
That's just not true. That's so not true. This is what I'll say to them. How much did you actually spend? How much time was spent doing it? Who did you hire? Did you try to do it yourself? What happens is they'll spend $2,000 and say, I give up. It doesn't work. That's just not the case. It's human psychology. Building trust, building brand awareness, having clear communications about your value proposition works. There's no debating that. And so I always tell people, hey, look at this as an eventuality. Does it work? Does it not? It will eventually work. And actually, what I advise clients to do is place smaller bets earlier on, because the idea is whether this works in 1 month, 6 months, or 18 months, you're going to crack the code, air quote. And so you have to think in, I need to budget in a way that allows me, specifically in the private wealth side, to get to the point that this is working. I can tell you, if you have a private wealth advisory and you're hosting in-person events, you have radio ads, you have TV ads, you're all over Facebook and Google, you're going to get leads. Now, again, that's an example of maybe it's not profitable, but marketing does work in every single industry. There's no debating that. And so if you're playing with a smaller purse, you just have to be much more tactical and have proper expectations set on how it will work. And so, financial advisory, there's more regulations around advertising in that than in bookkeeping. There are certainly certain media buying regulations. For example, on Facebook, you have to target broad, because if you target specifically, it can be discriminatory. So with financial, and many people don't know that. And so you have to have really good ads, because you need Facebook's algorithm to do the searching for you to find your customers, because there are certain things you can and cannot do when it comes to financial services and advertising. Like, for example, with our clients on the private wealth side, every single advertisement we make needs to get approved by their compliance department, every single one. And so there are increased hurdles, which is a good thing, because if you're dedicated to that space and you're dedicated to growing your accounting firm, your financial advisory, whatever it may be, there is less competition because of the, frankly, pardon my French, pain in the ass it can be to even get started advertising effectively in this space. And so we welcome the obstacles, we welcome the regulations, because frankly, it dissuades so many people from even attempting a serious push in the space. So my answer would be yes, it does work. And anyone who says it doesn't, I would love to talk to them for an hour, and I'd be happy to give them a free roadmap of you can make this work.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm in like a CFO mastermind type of group, and I shared with the group that, we were going to embark on this series and this journey with you guys. And one of them shared a YouTube video by a guy named Mike King, who's pretty prolific in the CFO, fractional CFO space, where he talks about, hey, I spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on this and it doesn't work. And I was like, okay, well, let's put some data behind this, and let's just open it up and let's see how it works. So I want to take a step back for a second, because as a finance guy, right, like I'm very much aware of sales and marketing and advertising, but I don't live in that space necessarily. And most of my peers, when I talk with, folks at other firms, a lot of people, and frankly, for that matter, a lot of business owners, they have a hard time delineating between, what is sales, what is advertising, what is marketing. So could you just take a minute to define what those are, from your perspective, and how you differentiate between them, and how I, as a firm owner, should be thinking about those approaches and how they nest together?
That's a great question. And I think, reasonably to your point, the lines have been blurred in the past 5 to 10 years, as marketing has been able to take on more of the load with, there are now service businesses that you don't talk to somebody until you're, if you ever talk to them, literally giving them your credit card, because they have 10 videos you're watching before you go to buy, you're reading, they're handling and confronting objections that they know you're going to have before you ever actually talk to someone on their sales staff. I know people who $1,000 plus offers that don't have any sales staff. All of it is done through their marketing. Now, of course, many businesses still, for very good reasons, still have appointment setters and SDRs, and those are great. What I would say is, I look at marketing as the top of funnel to sales, in the sense of, with your marketing, you're doing things like creating, and well, let me not get off track here. We'll delineate here between brand and performance marketing. Where brand marketing, you're creating the image of who you want to be portrayed as, you're growing the respect. The performance marketing side, which I live on, is much more transactional. We do something and we want to see a direct outcome because of it. And so for us, marketing, we kind of have a few pillars. One, brand awareness, of course, that's the foundational piece, but establishing competitive advantage and then confronting objections before they're aired is really big for us. We want to think of ourselves as the grease between greasing the wheels to take someone who is either, a cold or semi-warm prospect, to by the time they get to sales, they feel a sense of certainty or high intent. So it lowers the taxation on the sales team of closing them. On the sales side, I think that's more self-evident of a human being, which maybe one day it'll be all AI agents, but as of now, a human being who is doing the last bit of lifting to get them in and through the door. I don't think there is a huge difference. I think sales and marketing are two different acts, but with the same outcome. I am a very sales minded person. And so I want the sales team and the marketing team to be delivering the same message. They're just different mediums. So I kind of, if on a conveyor belt, marketing's at the front, sales is at the back, but I really look at it as the same message just being delivered through different channels.
Yeah, it's all on the same continuum. It's
Mm-hmm.
interesting. I again, I'm not a marketing dude, so in my own head, I don't really separate the brand from the performance like you just did. So that was very helpful to hear. I'm curious your thoughts on the importance of social media and building a brand on social. I didn't have any social media a year ago, besides like a personal Facebook page. And one of my business partners, Devin O'Brien, who founded Cordis, he was like, look, Josh, you have to get on to X and you have to start posting content and doing that to build that. How important is that from your perspective in terms of building the brand, and then how does that influence or impact the performance marketing? Is that a crucial component to it, or can this be done without any efforts or energy in that space?
That's a good question. It's not a necessity in performance marketing. And just to be clear, when we're talking performance and marketing, we're sticking here into the silo of, we'll call it lower middle market financial services, compared to a $400 million apparel
Sure.
brand doing performance. So
Yeah.
there are just very big differences in that. But I think social media certainly is a huge net positive when done correctly. And as you'll know this, I think people underestimate the lift that it is to be great on organic. No one grows to 50 or 100,000 followers by accident. It takes a lot of consistency and a voice, understanding trends, understanding different frameworks for content. Frankly, I'm not a huge organic guy myself, but being in and around the space, of course, I know many people that are. It's something that's worthwhile, I generally say. Now, I totally empathize with people who are like, hey, we just don't have the staff or the time to do this excellent. So I always tell people, well, the minimum you need to do is pass the smell test, which is, hey, this girl or guy is alive. They're using social media actively, and this is the same person. So the smell test being like, okay, this is your basic like modern day business card. that I look them up. Hey, they have a Facebook, they have an Instagram, they have an X, whatever it may be, a LinkedIn. However, it can be a hugely powerful tool. Those who can maximize on organic, it creates an evergreen funnel for them. They grow trust before people ever have to talk to them. And it can be done in pretty esoteric businesses. I don't know if you've been familiar with the jet business, Steve Arsano?
No.
So he's a private jet broker. He's an American. His office is in London. He kills the organic social media game on YouTube. He makes all of these shorts about life as a private jet broker. Why he's such a good example is most people, 99.9% of people who watch his content will never work with him because he's selling $50 million planes. But anyone who watches his content could tell you exactly what the process is like buying a plane from him. That is the huge advantage. That's something we're going to talk about with Cordis, is creating a familiarity where people develop what if we're going to use a buzzword, a parasocial relationship with you ahead of time. That by the time they want to work with Cordis, they go, I know exactly what they do. You know, something like fractional CFOs, and like you said, the guy who mentioned, oh, it doesn't work. It doesn't. Fractional CFOs, the biggest hurdle they face is clarity in their offer and their competitive advantage. Because I can name 15 fractional CFOs, few of them I've worked with. Most of them, I could not tell you, okay, what do they really, really do? And the big problem is non-financial people, and I'm sure you get this, they go, well, I have a CPA. I'm going to pay double, triple, quadruple, 5 times more for a fractional CFO. What's the difference?
Yeah.
Aren't they both numbers people? Like, why are they helping? What needs to happen for a business like fractional CFOs to work on organic media, and what the focus should be, is in-depth clarity of, this is something we did that your accountant doesn't do or doesn't even know how to do. Hey, this is, and you know this as well, there are a lot of CPAs out there who say, well, I'm a fractional CFO now. And there's a lot of people who are former CFOs, as with Cordis, that, hey, go, whoa. I have a much deeper resume than you do when it comes to actual financial work opposed to just accounting or managerial finance. So what I see is, on organic content in this space particularly, what you want to be doing is really showing off your expertise and authority. A great example for accountants is, would you know who Jasmine DeLucci is? She is a magnate on organic content for CPAs. So much so, she grew her CPA practice so much through her content that then now she created a consultancy for CPAs to grow their offices through organic social media. And so it's a great example, but she made a gajillion videos. And what happens is, it's a snowball effect. Over time, when you have 700 videos that people are watching on YouTube Shorts, they go, call her, because I already feel like I know her, because I've listened to her talk for hundreds of minutes, for hours. I know how she thinks. I know how she goes about these things. And they have that familiarity before the CPA office is ever even aware of who this viewer is. That is, and so to make a very long-winded answer short, you have to look at organic content and marketing in general with a long time horizon. The snowball effect is huge, but think of things in terms of, I'm going to do this for 36 months. Then I'll stop if it's not working. Otherwise, people quit too early. They quit before they ever get good at doing it. And that is why it doesn't work. Not because for some reason, it just fundamentally is not effective. That's not the case. It is certainly not the case.
Yeah, that's really good. That mind share, owning that bit of mind share, and just getting that familiarity, and exposure through all those different channels, I definitely know is so important. Yeah. Okay. Now I got another one for you. When I first started having this conversation with my partners about, hey, I want to do this thing, we've got our growth goals, and, our organic lead flow just isn't enough to get us to where we want to get. So we need to pour some gas on the lead flow fire here. And, I was like, well, let's start doing some paid ads. Like, we've hit the socials. So we're definitely having those conversations with our existing clients around, hey, who else do you know that you think would benefit from our services? And we're asking them for those referrals. So, we kind of maxed out, I think, all of the organic channels within the reason. And so when I brought up, like, hey, let's go explore paid ads, several of my partners, there's four of us, two of the four were actually very hesitant. And, one of them said, like, anytime we get a client that comes as a warm lead or a referral, they're always good and they're always sticky. And anytime we get these, like, we've done some cold email, and we've done some LinkedIn outreach, and we haven't had a lot of churn, but we have had, a little bit. And the churn that we have had has been explicitly from these cold channels. They come in, there's just communication struggles or whatever challenges. The clients are, their companies are really unstable, and and they'll try something and then they're on to the next thing. And some of this stuff, like, as just like performance marketing, it can take a while for you to get results. Start with a fractional CFO and then 30 days later be like, I didn't see any growth, we're out. What would you say to someone who says, we just want to grow through referrals only because the clients that we're going to get through paid are going to be low quality leads and not good, not what we need to grow our business? What would you say to them?
It's an interesting mindset. I would say, Thor, there can be truth to that. As a business scales up, you're always going to deal with having leads that aren't ideal or problem clients. But if you want to grow, there's only so many options to grow. And so if someone says to me, hey, we just want to grow through referral, I say, great. Maybe you have slower growth. Maybe you stagnate. But if that's what you want to do and you're happy financially, I wouldn't put a gun to anyone's head and say you have to run paid media. But on the other side, upside of establishing a paid media growth pillar is enormous. You can literally just type in numbers and know, hey, our business is going to grow. We're spending $100 a day, we're going to go to 150. We're spending $1,000 a day, we're going to go to 1,500. We have a predictable amount of leads. We have an anticipation of, how many new leads are going to be coming across weekly for us. We can have numbers built around them. All right, we've been doing this for a year. We know we can get leads between this range. We can get customers between this range. And that is hugely powerful, as you would know as a financial guy. If you can consistently have benchmarks as like customer acquisition cost, that provides huge value in informing hiring decisions, informing your own internal financial management decisions. And so my mindset is, yeah, if you're going to double the size of the business or triple the size of the business, you're going to have leads that aren't as great as you'd like or clients that aren't as great as you'd like. But I think that's a necessary trade-off in any business. That's, you're not going to bat 1,000. It's just not going to happen. And so um, to me, that's more of a question of priority. Would you rather have growth and a lot of good leads and some bad leads, or would you rather have slower growth or stagnation, but you're only working with 99% great leads from referrals? I think it's impossible to grow at a substantial rate without having growing pains that include having leads and clients that maybe at first glance look good, but at second glance aren't ideal.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing when you can look at the great Google machine and know that, with certainty that if I put $1 in, I'm going to get $1.60 out the other
Exactly.
side. And, we definitely see that with our e-commerce clients and, some of our larger home service business clients who, are spending significant amounts on their advertising. They've got so much data and such great information that they can I wouldn't say absolute certainty, but pretty darn good. Like, okay, for every dollar that I put in, I know that this is what's going to come out the other side. And it's usually pretty consistent until there's some big algorithm update or a major market shift or something like that. And then, there's a little rebaselining and then they're back to knowing pretty much what they're going to get out the other side.
For sure. And that's, the businesses that have the most bad leads are the biggest businesses that are growing the fastest. because they're just handling the most lead flow. That's just going to happen. And so, yeah, I think on a small scale, someone might go, hey, we had 3 new leads come in and all of them were bad. Well, we want to have 50 bad leads and 200 good leads and close 50 new clients. That's the math that we're looking at. And, part of our job is to help convey that to clients that, we're looking at that 12-month, 24, 36-month growth mindset. So those mountains are really just road bumps on that ascension. And so for us, like, in the same way you can get bad clients, we can get clients where it's, hey, it's not a great fit because, if a client comes with the mindset of, okay, in 30 days, I want my business to be transformed and everything to be magical. And, that also is not necessarily easily realistic. Can it happen? Sure. But for anything to work in business, certainly including paid media, I think having proper expectations, understanding the long-term upside can be gigantic, but having those expectations set and it be palatable of, yeah, you're going to get bad leads at times, but we certainly hope they're outnumbered by a significant margin by great leads, and that the long-term effects will be hugely positive for business growth and everything surrounding the financial health of the business.
Yeah. So I want to lean into that and pull that thread a little bit here. So, you're talking to accounting firm owners, financial advisory, business owners, um, and you've never, we've never run ads before. So from an expectation management standpoint, what should we be thinking about and what should our expectations be going into this so that it's an eyes wide open experience, right? Tell me like like I am. I've never done paid ads before. What should I be expecting and what should I not expect? Like give me both sides as someone who's never done this before so that, my expectations, it's not a total miss, right?
Gotcha. And great question. So, what I like to do is just look at industry benchmarks, and we've discussed this before. You can find this information on Google. Being in the space, I can get a lot of anecdotal evidence. Everyone in this space is always talking. All right, what are your CPMs like this week? What's your cost per lead? What's your show up rate to meetings booked? So we like to get benchmarks from there, and then two is thinking of the first month, certainly the first month, as learning stage. We're getting data now. Can you get some great leads the first month? Certainly. I was just telling you before this call, I have been working with a financial advisory and I said, hey, listen, first month, we're trying to learn. And one, the algorithm's learning how to best serve the ads. Two, our hypotheses on the ads and the calls to action right. Well, it turns out they started getting leads for 1/10 of the cost that we originally projected for the first month. So you can have that. You can have expectations that are hugely beat. But I like to say, hey, the first 30, 45, 50 days, everyone's learning. The Facebook algorithm is learning. We put together a go-to-market strategy and have our creative development, which is data-driven plus intuitive from what we've seen in the industry of what will give us the best shot when we start. But everything in paid media, the big wins are done through iteration. Don't expect to hit home runs at the first at bat or hit a grand slam. You might hit a home run, but you want to think, all right, we see here we're getting a pretty good click-through rate, but they're not booking on the landing page. All right, we need to go and adjust the landing page. We need to split test these different calls to action. Okay, this image, maybe it's not working. Let's switch this out. So I like to come in and think, all right, the first month, have an open mind and the expectation of we're getting data. And almost always, of course, we will get some great leads in. But with the long-term horizon of we're going to build this into a powerful marketing machine, it's like, let's not get crazy about cost per lead in the first 30 days because this is all about how can we get better. And you're always going to get better after the first month or two because you're going to have more data, you're going to get live feedback, and you're going to make decisions from there. And so to really answer your question, it depends on spend. We have people in the first month spend $10,000 or $15,000. We have others that spend $1,000. So, the outcomes of that vary hugely in the sense that if you're spending 10 times more, you can expect at least 10 times more leads. But really, it's a learning period, a data gathering period, and a period of making quick, logical iterations of how to improve the ad sets based off of what the feedback we're getting through the numbers.
Yeah. And so just to baseline it for, your average, say, $500,000 a year to $2 million a year financial services company, like what should be at least a minimum reasonable spend just to say, look, like you're not anything less than this. You're just kind of, taking a whiz in the wind here.
I think starting with $1,000, it's not a lot, but it should give you enough. Like you certainly should get a few leads from that. You would hope to God, I would say that, and that's really common. Like when I, and it's an interesting thing, which is something I didn't think when I started this business, a question I'd be asked so much, but I always get asked, well, how much do I need? Like, how much should I spend? Well, when my mind works is, well, as much as we possibly can if we're getting good cost per leads and good customer acquisition costs. But the minimum I would say is around $1,000. Certainly, someone who is dedicated to I'm going to get great at paid ads, they might say, "Hey, I can only spend 600, and I might lose it, but I'm going to spend 600 because I want to learn." That's great too. But in that $1,000 range is low, but enough where you think you're giving yourself enough to get some answers here. That's I I like that range. It's actually typically when we launch with clients, we start out spending very little, like $20 a day, and then we're scaling up, scaling up, scaling up. Yeah, I would say $1,000 is a very healthy start, especially for a smaller business. That's typically where we see them coming at a number they're comfortable and saying, hey, we're going to at least get some good data off of this and give it a college try, so to say.
Yeah, no, that's helpful. The expectation is, look, first month is just a learning month, right? You're just getting some data, the algorithm's learning, you're learning, we're learning. You mentioned some benchmarks. We just talked about like, okay, what's a sort of a minimum spend threshold? What are some other benchmarks and where do you get those? Like if you're not a marketing company, if somebody wants to go out and try and do some testing and learning on their own, is it just Googling it or, what are those key benchmarks? And then, if any of them, can you share them or where you go to look for that data?
Yeah, Google's great. Obviously, we have internal data from working with other clients, talking with people in the industry. One of it, because issue with Googling it is you can get some benchmarks, but if you say, okay, cost per lead in financial services, you're going to be comparing your cost per lead to State Farm. Well, it's not fair to compare your cost per lead to a household brand name spending millions of dollars a year on advertising. They're going to have a lower cost per lead than you, generally speaking. And so a great way to do it is to reach out to people in the industry. If someone direct messaged me and said, "Hey, I run a financial advisory, I run an accounting firm. Can you give me some idea on what I should be expecting?" I would be happy to break that down with the internal evidence I have. And so I think that's something, reaching out to people who are doing it, who own agencies, who own practices and firms that are willing to share, which most of them are, because people want to know, how am I doing in comparison to others that are in the same context as me as far as headcount, revenue, that kind of thing. That's a great way to pick up some anecdotal evidence, along with, of course, different agencies will release quarterly reports on, hey, across our brands, this is what we're seeing. A great one, not in financial services, but Common Thread Collective, which is a big agency.
Ecom, yeah.
They release, I think, monthly or quarterly, really comprehensive reports on trends they're seeing. That information is out there. The focus is finding information that's relevant to you. Are you a 25-person firm or are you a 2-person shop? You have to gauge it from there. And there are a lot of externalities, from software updates on iOS to Facebook and LinkedIn ad platform updates, to how strong is your brand, how good are your ads, how great's your call to action, do you have an organic presence or not, are you, like on Google, are you doing branded search or unbranded, are you On Facebook, are you retargeting your own audience, your own organic followers, or are you going after cold traffic? And so the word that we always heard in marketing is incrementality. As far as if you were to stop advertising, what would be your base revenue numbers and how incremental is your growth? Really, how truly profitable are your ads and your campaigns based on the foundation of if we were to do no marketing at all, how would that look? And so, there's a lot of ways. There's a great quote of, more lies are told in Excel than on Word. You can bend it any way you want as far as showing your performance, but
Yeah.
the way to stick to it is create your KPIs, find your benchmarks, which, a lot of it's just going to be creating your own benchmarks through your own spend and then going off of there and just trying to get better every month.
Yeah. In the CFO world, we say there's lies, damn lies, and statistics.
Yes, yes. And with creating expectations, what I say is less sexy than I'm going to get you 60 new leads in a month, all high intent, and you're going to pay nothing for it. But what happens is the awful thing that those agencies do is when they say things like that, they can sign 2 clients for every one that fires them in the first month. And so there's on a perpetual churn cycle. So my word of advice is it's hard to do this. And so anyone who is telling you it's easy is either lying to you or isn't even good enough to realize what they're saying is wrong. And be very skeptical of people who go, you're going to pay me $500 a month and I'm going to double your business in 2 months. Well, either they're the Pope and or they have a vow to poverty and they're way undercharging, or they just don't know what they're doing. And so I always, in the same way that paid media is hard, growing a business is hard, all of it is hard. All of it takes longer than you think. And that's just the reality. And that doesn't mean it's not a worthy cause, but you need to have reasonable expectations and a longer time horizon. If your mindset is we're just going to keep going until it's great. Now, of course, it doesn't mean light cash on fire. It means take thought out smaller bets that have a directional big bet and then iterate your way without risking too much and capitalizing on that big directional bet. For example, quarters with paid media.
Yeah. And that's exactly why we're doing this. Man, John, you just dropped so much gold in the last few minutes right there. I want to just back up and highlight a couple of things that you said. The first is the power of just reaching out to someone on X or, in LinkedIn. I never ceases to amaze me who you can just get a direct line to sometimes and get, crazy good information from, and great, 30-second consulting for no cost. And then, yeah, I want to second your Common Thread Collective. Even on the finance side of the house, I follow Taylor Holiday. I mean, he's in the e-com business, and obviously they, are focused on a lot of marketing from a finance side of the house. He's a fantastic follow, and I learn stuff from him all the time. And love their content, and consume it regularly. And then, third, I think there's so much gold in what you just said, right? Like, John Wooden, the old UCLA basketball coach, has got 12 national championships under his belt. He always said little things add up to big things. And I love your incremental approach of, eating that big marketing elephant one bite at a time, right? It's so powerful. And so many people get overwhelmed when they look at like, hey, I'm trying to double, my business from, 1.5 million to 3 million. That's overwhelming. But if you just break it down to like, hey, we're going to run this one test, right? And then, we'll figure out, okay, did this work or didn't it work? And you just keep iterating and iterating and iterating. And ultimately, if you keep doing that day in and day out, every day you get 1% better, at the end of the year, like you will have reached your goal and most likely surpassed it. That is so important what you just said. Such a fantastic mindset to have as you approach scaling a business. And I love that as a CFO, right? Because all of my clients are coming to me saying, I want to grow, I want to double, I want to triple, I want to, 10x this thing. And it's this huge task, and there's all these different things to think through, from the staffing and the marketing and the servicing and all that. Usually the first step is like, okay, let's take this big long telescope, kind of goal, and let's break it down into a microscopic steps, and then just start taking, the first step.
For sure. And, a powerful mindset that I see is, and this, no one wants to lose money, but the best marketers I know, best brand owners I know, they go, I have a budget every month of I'm okay with losing this money, but I'm always going to be testing something new, always. And I don't even expect it. Like a great one is, oh geez, what's his name? Founder of Ridge Wallet.
Okay.
Uh,
Yeah.
you might have. They spend enormous amounts on podcasts, on paid media, but he goes through. He goes, every year I lose whatever it is, $500,000 on tests, but I'm the first to know what's right because I'm always testing. And so there's something to be said where as you go along and as you scale up, I'm going to spend this on AI agents. I'm going to spend this on whatever, and keep in the same way you go to a casino and say, I'm going to take $200 cash and nothing more, but I'm going to test. Having that testing mindset is something that is great to do, even on a small scale. I always think of, I don't know if you would know who Daniel Negreanu is, famous poker player, but he says he always playing small ball. And in the same John Wooden quote of small things lead to big things, he's always has his hat in the ring. He's always placing those small bets. And over time, if you do that for a year, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, you are going to find something that works. And then you can go all in. But if you don't have your hat in the arena, if you don't have skin in the game, you're not going to see that door open. But you need to work with someone like a fractional CFO who can tell you, hey, you can comfortably bet this monthly, and you'll be okay betting it. And if it's not profitable, you're fine. That's the way you have to think about these things, and make sure you have the coverage on new platforms with new strategies, that it gives you the chance for the slam dunk, for the grand slam. Otherwise, you're not even in the game. You don't have the chance to get that play.
Yeah, so much good stuff there. Well, we're almost at an hour, so I wanted to ask, maybe in the next couple minutes here, what haven't I asked you about that I should be asking you about
Well,
as someone who hasn't done this before?
that's a great question. I love asking that question of what haven't I asked you? Ooh, that's a good one. One thing we haven't discussed is platforms. And there aren't too many players in town. I always get asked about this, and with us, we're talking about doing LinkedIn. 85% of our clients were working Meta or LinkedIn, pretty much. Those platforms, I'm not going to call them crazily similar, but I think they normally think Google versus Meta. And so what I would say was, coming down to choosing a platform has a lot to do with the anatomy of your business and your offerings and what you're trying to get done. And so where Google is great, like Google LSAs, local service ads can be great. Of course, ranking on Google can be great. Keyword search is awesome. Like, if someone looks up fractional CFO, you would hope, Cordis is at the top of that list. Over time, you want to have some established presence on multiple platforms. Maybe not every single one, but you need some SEO. You want some paid search on Google. You do want Facebook ads, you do want LinkedIn ads. Don't spread yourself too thin too early on. And so for business owners out there that are kind of thinking about or just getting their feet wet in this space, focus on mastering or at least getting competent on one acquisition channel before you go too broad. And so when people are like, hey, I'm going to handle SEO and LinkedIn and Facebook and my Twitter and YouTube and TikTok, it's like, well, you're going to handle none of them, because it's really hard to do one of them well. And it certainly can be impossible for one person to do 5 of them well. And so depending on what you're offering, I think really no channel is bad. It's more a game of how you tailor your content for those channels. In the same way, like you, Josh, could have a great YouTube channel and you have a great Twitter, but the style of content is different. And so paid media and organic media, on the paid side, Facebook is always great just because it has the most users. It has the most used ad platform, even though their customer service sucks and they need to fix it. Frankly, that's the case. But besides that, think of it like the S&P, the stock market. It has the most liquidity. It has the most ad inventory. It has the biggest audiences, the most interest. But on the organic media side, it's not so much the platforms, but as much as it is how competent you become with a said platform. Generally speaking, Facebook is going to have more people over 35 and 40. So if you're selling, like for you, selling to probably, I'm sure a lot of your clients are 40, 50-year-old business owners. Most of them are going to be on Facebook and or LinkedIn, some of them on Twitter, less or so on Instagram. I'm sure you have very few clients who are actively on Snapchat. You know, these are things, basic rules of thumb, but don't overthink getting on multiple platforms. More so, again, long time horizon, consistency and discipline, getting good at one platform, both on paid media and on organic media. That's the heuristic, not as much, oh, which platform is best.
That's good. That's great. I figured we would talk about that in our next session on strategy, but
We can get more in depth on that,
yeah,
especially in the paid media side. We can talk about CPMS and how big is the addressable audience that we can get high intense lead from on Meta versus a LinkedIn, and we can discuss all of that. But that was the one thing that came to mind of, okay, we really haven't talked about that yet, but we'll get into that for sure.
yeah, no, that's good. That's great. John, this has been super interesting. Most of this stuff before getting on and just going through it again is super valuable for me. Plan to share and publish this on my channels, and I'm sure you'll put it on yours as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so next time we jump on, let's talk strategy and let's just talk about like, okay, what does it look like to put a campaign together, right? What is it what do you how do you do your research and how do you build an ad strategy and what does that look like? So I look forward to our next call when we jump on and kind of break it down from a strategic standpoint.
Absolutely. Can't wait. It's been a huge pleasure. Super fun doing this, and I look forward to more episodes.
All right, and I'll be rooting for the Steelers this weekend.
Please do. Please do. If we can get to 10-3, I'll be feeling pretty good.
Awesome. All right, man. Well, I appreciate your time as always. It's great to catch up with you, and we'll talk soon.
I believe in a few hours.
All right. See ya.
All right. I'll see ya.